And we're live with a weird image. Let's zoom out slowly so you can see what it is. What do you think it is, Jeff?
You?
I'm weird, but I'm not that particular image.
Well, that's what's on my screen, but I don't see when you.
Ah, right. Yes, it's because because I'm sharing the screen with the other one. Yes, that's what you mean. Yeah.
If I click on the square, then I do.
Yeah. There you go.
A person.
There we go. So that's just the image they use for this episode, which is people are alike all over. Especially when you can't afford alien makeup or special effects. Right then. I'm trying to do the Rod Serling voice. You're looking at a species of flimsy little two-legged... Oh, it's the way he writes this first line. You're looking at a species of flimsy little two-legged animal with extremely small heads whose name is man. Warren Markuson, age 35. Samuel A. Conrad, age 31. They're taking a highway into the cosmos. Man unshackling himself and sending his tiny...
Now, see, Ben, you can't just change his words because you feel like it.
I'm utilitarian.
Well, yeah, but if you're gonna quote somebody, I'm fine with you saying something else. But if you quote somebody, make it accurate.
All right then. They're taking a highway into space. Man unshackling himself and sending his tiny groping fingers up into the unknown. Their destination is Mars, and in just a moment we'll land there with them.
Why is it important to you to change the words in this book from space to cosmos?
It's an INTP thing.
No, I don't buy that. I don't buy that. Because it's not a matter of... Like, later in this thing, I see you change something. Now, that in itself seems obsessive. But at least I feel like that's... You for whatever reason, you felt like that was about accuracy. But the other one, I don't understand. So I want you to explain it to me.
It's just my personal preference for the word cosmos over space.
You just think it sounds better?
Well, it's just my personal preference because it's like, ooh, space. Well, we got...
Yeah, but preference of what, though? That's what I'm trying to get at.
I just like the word more.
Okay.
Right then.
I don't.
Well, that is your right.
In fact, you say INTP thing, but honestly, cosmos sounds more NF-y because it's all like ethereal sounding.
Yes, they do say cosmic a lot, the NFs. I have noticed that with a particular...
Whereas space is just like vastness. So it has a different feeling to it.
Yeah. Well, they used to call it outer space. Right then. Right, so I'll read through this, and then I'll get your opinion. Or opinions. When their ship crashes on the Martian surface, Markuson, the optimist who believes people are alike all over, even on Mars, is killed. Left alone is Sam Conrad, who does not share Markuson's philosophy and who is terrified when he hears someone banging on the outside of the ship. His terror turns to relief, however, when he ventures out and sees that the Martians are indeed human, albeit telepathic. Well, all they said was this was about the fact about why could he understand them. And they said that he's actually speaking their language. And they said that their unconscious transference, you'd call it hypnosis of a sort. Which was a fairly decent explanation for overcoming the language barrier. Because part of the hypnosis could be them appearing to move their lips in English as well. Right. Are indeed human, albeit telepathic, and that they appear extremely friendly. I didn't know that they appeared extremely friendly, but nice enough. The next morning, the Martians present him with a surprise. A house built to look exactly like the one on Earth. Yeah, they said it was from his memories. Pleased by this, Conrad is left alone inside. But very soon, Conrad comes to the shocking realization that the house has no windows and all the doors are locked. Suddenly, a wall slides apart, revealing vertical bars beyond which stands a crowd of gaping Martians. Conrad is in a zoo. He cries out, Marcusson, you were right. People are alike everywhere. I'll just make a comment on the the thing of him being in the house and him finding no windows. Did you ever see the episode of Knots Landing where there was this stalker that abducted a woman and put her in this sort of house like that? And
I
she
don't
went.
know.
There was a story
If
like
it's
that.
from the last few seasons of Knots Landing, don't tell me about it because
Oh, I won't say any more then.
I just finished season 11.
Right. See, I don't know
So
when it was from, but it was, and you've not
yeah.
come across that yet. But that was an
See, I
interesting
started
story.
watching Knots Landing originally in season 12, so I didn't know anything from the first 11 seasons. But then more recently, of course, I've started watching stuff in order, late 80s into the 90s, and so I started again with season, I don't know, it was around 7 maybe, 7 or 8. So I still haven't seen most of the earlier ones, although there's certain scenes or episodes that I saw over the years. But anyway,
Decent enough series, Knots Landing. All right.
yeah.
Oh, what we got here? Right then. Species of animal brought back alive. Interesting similarity in physical characteristics to human beings. In head, trunk, arms, legs, hands, feet. Very tiny, undeveloped brain. Comes from the primitive planet named Earth. Calls himself Samuel Conrad, and he will remain here in his cage with the running water and the electricity and the central heat as long as he lives. Samuel Conrad has found the Twilight Zone. So over to you, Jeff. I'll put the slides on.
Well, leave it there first because you
Okay.
always do that, and then I can't comment on what's on the screen because it goes away and I can't see it anymore.
There you go.
So first of all, both times he actually says species, not
Yes.
with S.
That's right.
Even though it's written as species, but he pronounces it species.
Yep.
The other thing is every time they said Marcusson, it sounded like moccasin to me. So I was thinking the snake.
Hmm.
So they almost sounded like you talked about American theater standard or whatever, but it sounded more of like a British pronunciation almost because they didn't pronounce the R very much.
That gets me onto the fact that you've got Roddy McDowall, a British actor, with a non-brilliant American accent.
Well, I mean, other than that, I wouldn't have known the guy wasn't American. But that, and I just, like I said, I just thought that was how you pronounce the dude's name, so I thought it was moccasin. But that happens to me on British TV shows, but not as much with American shows, because I'll hear a name said on like many Doctor Who episodes. They'll say a name that when I'm watching the initial episode, I've never seen that name written, and then later on when I read stuff about it and I see the name, I'm like, oh, that's not how I would have thought it spelled because that's not how they were pronouncing it to me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen as much, like I said, with American stuff. But this one it did.
Yeah, because it was probably only his character that said Marcusson, Roddy McDowall's character.
Yeah, I can't remember if anybody else did or not, but if they did, if it was one of the Martian people, then they might have just said it the way that he did. So I don't know. The very beginning of this one reminded me a lot of the previous one about the guy who was trying to escape from the planet he was on. Because the scene at the beginning where they're like sort of in the hangar looking thing and talking to each other, that part was very similar. They maybe even used the same set.
Was it like the pilot, Where Is Everybody? That one? Or was it the three?
No, the one where the guy and his family and the other neighbors or whatever were gonna try to escape.
Oh, right, yes, Third from the Sun.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the title, but I didn't want to say the ending because I didn't. We've talked about not spoiling one.
Yeah, gotcha.
Even one we've already reviewed, but just so I didn't say what the revelation at the end. But at the beginning scene, it looks very similar when that guy that's kind of trying to pump him for information is talking to him. So at first I thought it was going to be the exact same thing. except sort of in reverse, because it's the main guy in this that seems at first like he's the one that's a little bit creepier and trying to get information from the other guy. But I thought it was a little too scripted sounding in that initial scene. You know, I'm not going to say that there's no two guys in that situation who would talk to each other in sort of speeches
Yeah.
like they do, but it seemed a little bit just put on.
Yeah.
Which is why a part of me, you know, knowing Twilight Zone and the twists and things, at first I'm thinking, is this an act? Is this going to end up being like they're doing a scene or something? But no, it's supposed to be real. But yeah, the beginning, it definitely did not seem very natural.
Yeah, it was the use of exposition, like forcing words into the character's mouths, like him calling himself a biologist just in order to give the audience that knowledge. And it was like, well, and so Robert McKee talks about turning exposition into ammunition. And
yeah, it overall the episode seemed very short, and I think part of it was like we've talked before about how in the amount of time they have, it's not always easy to develop much of the character of the main characters, you know, to know much about them. And obviously in this story, they didn't care as much about that as just sort of the setting. It was one of those where the setting and the ultimate sort of point they were trying to hammer home about people
yeah,
was more important than anything about the individuals really involved. I mean, even that description saying the other guy's an optimist. I mean, that's really all you can say about him, and you can't even really say that because he doesn't really say enough for you to know if he's in general an optimist or he's just. I don't know. Honestly, I think maybe it would be a case for that thing we've talked about in the Kersey book before about cynicism and optimism going together in artisans because it's sort of this can be seen either way because it's sort of like saying people are the same all over isn't necessarily optimism. It's just sort of saying you think that's reality. That's just how people are.
right.
And surprisingly, you know, the non-Marcuson guy, I can't remember his name now.
I'll get the book.
It's Pac-Man. You see Pac-Man on the wall?
Oh yes.
That immediately made me wonder if the creators of Pac-Man saw this and got the idea for
Maybe
Pac-Man.
Sam Conrad. By the way, I thought this set was brilliant. I mean,
yeah, I liked that too. That was one of the better things about an episode for sure was what they did with the spaceship set. Because it conveys exactly what they're trying to convey with the way they did it.
Yeah.
It does make me think, which trillionaire on Earth is funding this that they have so much room in their in their ship for two people? I'm like, that's got to be really, really expensive. That was a few things I wondered about that because I'm like, you know, when they're, you know, they don't say that this is the first mission to Mars.
No.
But if it is, they sure didn't seem much to care much about checking back with Earth and letting anybody know what was happening. You know, there was no radio contact or, you know, and maybe, see, I don't know if at the time, you know, they may have believed, they may have thought something like that impossible in terms of like, you know, they wouldn't be able to contact somebody that far away, so they wouldn't bother to. What I mean is it may have been seen as that absurd a concept that they wouldn't have tried to be communicating with Earth while they were doing that far away. I don't know, but it's certainly my first thought is that assuming at some point in the future that does happen, where we have a manned mission to Mars that actually makes it, that I would assume that'd be something that they would be broadcasting back to Earth. Obviously, it would take a while, but it would still be done.
I just thought, I mean, I've written down on my board, like, I've written props to those who decided and implemented the ship crash set. I just thought that was like really, because so many times we've seen it in Doctor Who and other things where it's just level and it's flat.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas that I just thought was really well done.
Yeah, and it actually gave me the impression, like at first, especially when he said he didn't want to go out the door and stuff like that, I wasn't sure whether or not that was going to be, ultimately, that would be the way the episode ended, was just opening the door itself. That the rest of the episode would be in the ship, because it certainly could be, and they could have, when he was hearing the banging and stuff, I was thinking more along the end, and maybe this is more Doctor Who influence, but more I was thinking something got in the ship
Mm,
as opposed to something was outside the ship.
right.
And I definitely was surprised. Like, you talk about the surprise angles. I did not expect the Thalls to be there when they opened the
Yes.
opened the door. That was, especially not so many of them all like just staring there. So I was like,
Well, I
okay,
mean,
that was kind of funny.
they would say, these are pre-Thal, though. But I know what you mean.
Yeah, but just a bunch of people just standing there. I was not expecting that, so that was.
I mean, there's a little touch where where they set up the fact with this chick here, where she might be like the human rights protester. She was not exactly okay
Yeah,
with
it was hard to get a read on
laptop.
her because,
Yeah.
it was like obviously she was slightly unhappy with what was going on, but I wasn't sure the extent of it. And once it got to the part where he's in here, I did, and maybe again it's just my suspicious nature. Every time they were like, "Wait here while we do something somewhere else," I definitely thought like their motives are not entirely open here. Obviously, they're something they're thinking he's not going to be down with is going on. Uh, and then once he got to the point where he couldn't get out, then I was like, yeah, I thought they were keeping him captive in some way. But again, I didn't expect the opening the door and it was people were viewing him like in the zoo kind of thing, or it could have been a museum or anything like that. So that so I would say that those particular scenes were effective and that I didn't immediately exactly know what they were going to do with it, but.
Yeah.
I did get the idea that he was going to be held against his will in some capacity. I just didn't know exactly how it was going to be. Obviously, there's different ways that kind of story has been done, different directions they've gone with that in things like the natives of somewhere are going to eat the person, or all kinds of things like that that have been done. Besides, do medical experiments on them and all that kind of thing may be down the road. But for now, they're keen just to show them off. Yeah.
I mean, this bit here, because they've talked about how the language is understandable.
Yeah, another thing that I thought one thing they could have done was when he said, like, he kept on stressing how you guys are humans just like me, and they didn't really respond to that, and so I kind of had the feeling like basically that was an illusion too, and that they could have, when they had the door open, they could have revealed that the ones watching him really didn't look like that, and they showed whatever their natural form was.
Mm.
And that could have just been something to show him so that he would be comfortable with doing what they want him to do.
But Jeff, that would have cost quite a bit of money.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it would have cost that much money. You wouldn't necessarily have had to have that many people there to pull it off, So you could have done, more of the dramatic thing where they'll show like one or two, but then switch cameras angles to make it look like it's showing more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like instead of showing the whole wide shot, you just focus on, you could have had maybe even like supposed to be a little kid of whatever creature, and you see that first, and then it shows other ones like looking at, it's the kid's parents or other stuff, and it, some other. But obviously that could have been cheesy depending on what they look like. Yeah. So this might have been more effective. I don't know.
I mean, it certainly is cheaper to do it this way, and rather than getting people putting them in complex alien makeup.
Well, yeah, I wasn't even thinking a lot of complex makeup. I was just thinking more like costumes because you could
right.
that weren't that expensive. But whatever the precursor to Jim Henson's Creature Shop was at the time.
Yeah, because I mentioned this last week, like with the aging makeup on. Well, in the previous episode, the aging makeup. We won't mention the name, but that stuff was really hard back then to do, like convincing prosthetics for the alien makeup. And you know what it was like in Doctor Who, where there was this tendency to look rubbery unless you had a really good makeup artist. Like the was it the Draconians looked okay.
Yeah, there were some that were much better than others.
And of course the Centaurans were good as well.
They did a really good job on the original Davros.
Yes.
But that was the other thing you mentioned, age. That this was one where I've remarked in the past about times where the character didn't look the age they said they were, and this they actually did.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, they said they didn't really need to say the age of these two characters, but they did, and they both looked at about the age that they said they were. So I was like, oh.
It's someone should have told Rod there is no need. It's not a plot point.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that, but I guess it's kind of part of that like establishing reality thing. That I figure if you give details of the character like that, that it's sort of placing them in a certain context.
It's almost as if he's putting it in the script to force people to cast it the way he wants it.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking when it came to when I was saying about the actors that they put. Is that in this case they got people that really did look the ages they were supposed to be, and it does. The one thing that it does is it allows for that where I'm not thinking, oh, they don't look that age. Like I was, for instance, with the one about the actress who didn't look old enough to be playing as old as to be the washed up actress they were.
Oh yeah, gotcha. 16mm shrine, yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of times it's the opposite. Is that I don't know if it's just the way of different ways of makeup or costumes were done, or just the way people in general dressed or talked or whatever. But usually when I see television or movies, the older they are, the more that when they have like teenage characters, they seem older than that to me. So I don't know if that's just a perception thing on my part or whether there's elements to it where, and I know that there were plenty of times where adult actors have played teenagers that were older than that, but I mean, they never seem, even when they really were that age, they almost always seem older.
Oh yeah, because the writers forget, because the writers just want to write. No, it's funny when it's a sitcom kid and they're like 8 and they give them smart lines.
Yeah, well, that reminds me again something I had occasion to mention recently that one reason that I watched Home Improvement as much as I did was because the kids were some of the more realistically written and portrayed kids on sitcoms. They weren't just coming in the room and spouting one-liners and walking off.
Yeah, and also you got a lead character. I mean, it was quite politically even on it. I think the Tim character was a little bit. I think they had the wife was more liberal, and he was more Republican. I think in the show. But yeah.
I don't know that they spent much time on political.
Yeah, it wasn't much, but just general attitude. Because I only watched a little bit of it. But yeah,
as far as their parenting, I feel like it was somewhat the opposite because he was more. I mean, obviously different meanings to those words, but I mean, he seemed more lenient with the kids.
Yeah, because
she was a little bit more of the disciplinarian.
Yeah, because I think probably artisan character, but I remember him because I remember a sequence like, and he was sort of saying to his daughter, "What do we call them?" Yes, Democrats. What do we call them? Republicans. It was just that kind of.
I think you're thinking of a different show.
Maybe, but I did add Tim Allen in it.
Yeah, because he's currently still on a show called Last Man Standing that I've never seen, but apparently it does have more political stuff on it. But so I don't know anything about that. But on Home Improvement, he didn't have a daughter; he had 3 sons.
Oh yeah, it might have been one of the sons. I'm not sure. It's been a long time. This has been a long time.
Yeah.
But
anyway, back to Twilight Zone.
I think he's a pretty good actor. All right.
Yeah, I was trying to think if I had anything initially else I was trying to say before we got to this stuff, but I guess, I mean, just the very first thing I thought when it was over was just, there goes another uplifting episode of Twilight Zone.
Yeah, but it's not that bad. If
I didn't say it was bad.
no. What I mean is no. What I meant was like the guy's. It depends what visitors he gets.
Really? How's that going to
Okay, Jeff. How would you feel if you were him in that situation?
Well, my first thought would probably be like, you know, well, okay, a couple of things. Probably would be like, are they just like having me live in this one thing, or are they going to be a bunch of other stuff? Like I was thinking, about when I said earlier about like what other stuff. And if it was just I'm hanging out in this house the rest of my life, people are going to watch me or whatever, then, I could still have some fun.
Yeah, but I think
I
you
would
would.
try to make the most of it.
I think you would engineer because you've got like what you want more than anything else is a permanent audience. You could like
Well,
give ideas.
but it might, and that
Fantastic.
brings up another point because it might not be permanent. The the novelty could wear off. There's times I've been to the zoo where there's almost nobody there. So they could be like, it might not take them very long to be like, that's all he does.
Yeah, but I think you would adapt though because you've got the whole planet there.
The whole planet.
The whole planet.
I don't know if it's the whole planet. See, they didn't establish any of that. Is this on reality TV, or is it just the people that show up and look through the window? Because that's not very many people.
Because I think what he would do is he would actually talk to the people who are in charge of putting him in there, and like get some things timed out, get some TV contracts. Like, okay, if I'm the exhibit, let's milk it.
Well, maybe I don't know, because I don't know I don't know how they did any of that. Whether they would come back and speak to him regularly, whether they just, they would come back just to restock the food or whatever, whatever else. So there's a lot of variables that we don't know about how the life would actually be.
If there was if there was an alien on this planet, people would want interviews, TV shows, all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah. But again, they don't show any of that, so we don't know.
No.
We don't know how simple a thing it is. So obviously, it potentially could get boring depending on what he had access to.
So there's two themes with you, Jeff, that I've noticed over the years. There's you wanting the attention, but then there's also your freedom aspect.
Yeah, and I do think about that because there's always going to be a little bit of feeling like bust out of the place just because I don't like being held against my will. But by the same token, if I was able to find enough things to enjoy myself, you could say in my real life, even though I can technically come and go as I please, that just in the fact that I live in a society where, I gotta eat, and, unless I want to go hunt my own food, then I gotta pay somebody for food. So I gotta have a job to get money and a place to live. So in a way, I am sort of held in that there's a certain routine to my life that I live by because it's what makes the most sense at the time, not because, someone is holding a gun to my head or I can't actually go out the door. But you could say that there's a certain confinement there that I'm a willing participant to. So, it's kind of what level of freedom someone requires. And depending on what was provided to me there, it's possible that I could be content enough to live my life, technically not having freedom to move out, to be out of a certain space, but still have the ability to enjoy things that I did. So, it's not my ideal by any means. My younger brother and I had a discussion about that once, where he was saying something about some kind of future where people had lived in like their own little cubicles where everything was taken care of them. And I'm like, that sounds like a bad sci-fi thing to me. And in fact, there was a Doctor Who audio story with a similar theme that basically in the future humans had set up society like that, and because of that, they were very easily taken over by another race of aliens or whatever. because nobody, did anything to expand anything or whatever. Everybody was just content to live in these little things in their own little spaces and just have things provided for them.
Yeah. So I like the line at the end with "You're right, people are." He said, "You're right, people are like everywhere." And of course, he said "alike all over," the original guy, but just paraphrasing it, he was. But mention the sign. So there wasn't this? Was this quite similar to the pilot of Star Trek, The Cage? Because I think that was about people who were like being locked up, and like there was kind of similar stories in the original Star Trek series.
Yeah, if I remember right, in that that was a little closer to what I was saying about the aliens kind of experimenting. It's because they weren't just like, oh, let's observe in his natural habitat. It was more like, let's apply all these different factors and see how he reacts to it.
Mm.
So it was like some were like physical challenges and others supposed to be more mental or whatever. And testing his pain threshold and that kind of stuff. So it was a lot more aggressive than this was.
So you might go, if you were in that situation, you might go, I've seen this Star Trek episode, I better start getting entertaining before they experiment on me.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. I guess I would, I know they always have to like do the over dramatic thing for TV, but I don't tend to react quite as dramatically until I really know the parameters or something. Like when it's unknown, I might still be scared about things. Like I would agree with him on that when he said he was frightened. Obviously, the prospect of the unknown is frightening to me, but I'm also quick to adapt to things when they're presented to me if I understand what I'm being presented with,
right,
to any level. So I would think at the point they ended the episode, I would obviously still have some apprehension, but it wouldn't take me very long to kind of be thinking, okay, well, what do I do now? How do I adjust to this, or what's on TV, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd also think that you'd be curious about them as well. It's like,
well, sure. And I probably would have been thinking the same things that I said earlier about it. Is this really what they look like, or are they just projecting this because they said they can do this hypnosis thing on me? So am I just going to see them looking like humans, but they really look like something else? Or
yeah, but I think ultimately you could, in that situation, you could get your dream job of a chat show host.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing is, zoos on Earth, we don't. The animals, I'm not going to say they're incapable of speaking to us, but not in a way that we tend to 100% understand.
Yeah.
So and I wondered that at first, and they had kind of this, I think I heard some people laughing when they were first looking at him. And so I'm like, if they really do look similar, then they wouldn't probably be laughing at what he looked like. But is it because the language is sounding different now? Like, did they turn off the thing where he's speaking their language, or
Yeah, that's the thing.
So they're just hearing like monkey noises or something.
Let's go to the zoo to look at someone who looks exactly like us.
Yeah.
Which is why in the original, because we got here some details about the original short story it was based on.
Well, by all means, fill us in.
Where everybody was. So here we go. People Are Like All Over is adapted from Paul Fairman's Brothers Beyond the Void, which originally appeared in the March 1952 issue of Fantastic Adventures, and is included in August Derleth's anthology Worlds of Tomorrow. Yeah, so this is where a lot of people got their science fiction in the 1950s. They were in these kind of like short periodicals such as Fantastic Adventures. In the original story, however, it is Marcusson alone who goes to Mars. Sam Conrad is an older friend who stays at home. As for the Martians, they are 4.5 feet tall, not ugly or especially beautiful, and they certainly don't look like Susan Oliver. something that is undoubtedly the Martians' loss, according to the writer of this book. In scripting this for the Twilight Zone, Serling put added emphasis on the irony of the piece by making Sam Conrad initially afraid of the Martians and then being reassured by Markuson's conviction that people are the same all over. A cosmic truth that ultimately brings about his downfall. Jeff, he could be an NF. He used the word cosmic. Particularly nice is the show's opening shot. It is the night before the launch. Markuson and Conrad stand behind a metal fence looking up at their ship. Their hands idly grasp the metal links. They look, for all the world, like animals in a cage.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with them again when they say that the truth ultimately brings about his downfall. I mean, what brings about his downfall, if you want to call it that, was that he doesn't have a means of escape. But it doesn't really matter. Like even if he had been suspicious enough of them to be like, no, I think I'll just hang out in my ship.
Yeah, but you see,
I mean, that wouldn't necessarily have been better.
I'm going to give a drive-by typing of the guy, Conrad. I think he's INTP, and so he doesn't really worry that much. As long
Conrad or the other guy?
The Conrad, I think Conrad, the guy that Roddy McDowall was playing, when he talked about being a scientist and then being afraid, and so like his interaction style is sort of accommodating, and so I think INTP. Me or somebody else? It's a drive-by typing. Overall impression, I would say INTP. Just a guess.
I just don't. That's another time where I don't think the character there's nearly enough to even make a guess on him.
Yeah, I'm using some very slight data points. Scientist, and he seems a bit scared. Therefore,
yeah. I mean, there is a larger percentage of NTs in science than some other fields.
Yeah.
But scared, that could be anybody. So.
Yeah. Then also when he was
doesn't seem especially intuitive in anything that he says or does.
No. Yeah.
I mean, I guess at the very beginning, so that to me, like I said, at the very beginning, he comes off a little bit creepy. And I'm not sure if that was what was intended, but he's sort of almost trance-like at the beginning.
Yeah.
And there's times later which he does that too, but it's tough to tell because his only predominant character quality is his fear, and so you don't really see much else about his personality.
And there's bits later on when he asks questions when he wants to know how their society works and all of these other things, and that's a bit. But it like I said, it's a very drive-by. It's like driving by a mile away with a telescope on, with one eye closed.
I would say he definitely seems like the thinking type. I'd say that preference is pretty evident because he doesn't seem very concerned with his own or anyone else's emotions, and he's not asking about like anything to do with the etiquette or the traditions or anything like that that sort of indicates that he's got more of a human concern.
Yeah.
He's other than just as like you said, as a biologist, as a scientist or whatever. So, and he's not as detached seeming as like Spock or something. It's not that kind of deal. But he's also not like. He doesn't say you said something about the woman, something about human rights. You don't hear him say anything about that.
No.
He's not mentioning anything to do with the ethics of anything involved. That's the word I would think I was looking for. Ethics, yeah. Because yes, I know before somebody comments or corrects me that I know that the feeling preference is not necessarily about emotions, but ethical judgments.
Internally referenced ones. It varies with that. It's lots of different aspects to it. See other videos on the channels, folks, for a discussion of the concept of feeling. Well,
Yeah, we could do a whole other video sometime on my theory that everyone's a feeler.
well, yeah, unless they're a psychopath. Yes, they all have feelings.
Well, not, and I don't mean they all have feelings. That's not even what I mean. I mean that ultimately people all make decisions based on how they feel. Somebody can claim that they're making a choice based on logic,
That's a
but
good point.
what appears as logical to them is still based on what they feel is logical.
Yeah, and also it can be, they can sort of rationalize what they want to do, and what they want to do is based off a feeling.
Yeah, and I've never, speaking of emotions, I never encounter anyone as emotional as a thinking type preference person trying to defend their logic
Mm.
when they think it's been challenged by somebody, when they don't have enough of a basis for it or whatever. That's they get really emotionally defensive sounding.
Yeah, especially TE Doms. Yeah.
I'd like to ban that phrase.
TE Doms.
Well, any of those things where somebody uses function shorthand followed by DOMs, that just sounds terrible to me.
Okay.
You said the thing about space and cosmos. That's just, to me, it's like, it's a
Jeff, there are little things which annoy you.
I didn't say there wasn't anything that annoys me. I was giving you an example of something where, again, it's that the way it sounds or the way it looks written is just off-putting.
Okay, maybe TE leads.
It sounds like some sort of creature or fetish or something. It just sounds wrong.
I'll just call them those people who resemble ETJs.
That's closer. Closer.
Or the
because again, not to get off on a whole other subject, but I don't entirely agree with the concept that you can know what someone's quote unquote lead function is.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Because it's really, everything is sort of a combination of things, and there's no like real test of that.
Yeah, and I like how Linda Berens, she calls her functions theory, she calls it cognitive dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
It's lots of different things going on at the moment, and it's what and if you are using a process, the process is specific to the thing that you're doing, and it's going to be a blend of all other different processes, and it's going to be a blend of a load of processes that we haven't got names for yet. And then
one of the reasons I hate people doing that based on that, because then they'll use that for these groupings that don't really make much sense, because the people of different temperament use that process completely differently.
Yes, Linda Berens wrote about that in her book. Usually people
you have people that are so, again, the young theist types, as I call them, that are so tied to that. Oh, this function is always the most important thing. So they'll say something like, oh, an ENTJ is more like an ESTJ than an ENTP, for instance. But that's not necessarily true. Just because you're going by the functions.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like, because the way that even if you swallow the concept of extroverted thinking is supposedly their number one function, they use it differently enough that they come off in terms of behavior in real life very differently in the way that they behave. Yeah,
and even and well-developed ENTPs that are able to like invent stuff. Not just the only kind of ENTP, of well-developed ENTP. They can have strong. Like for instance, Ray Kersey wrote about the fact that they actually build something. They extrovert their thinking and make something useful. But Linda Berens wrote something in this book. Now, Dario Nardi sent me this PDF, and I printed it off. It's called Dynamics of Personality Type. And the actual book is about $200 because it's not very available. So, and there is a bit in here, and this is the book Linda Berens produced that was a little bit too complicated for people, and so she produced another book called Cracking the Personality Type Code. And so this is her functions book, and she writes that bit what Jeff mentioned at the back about how functions are used differently because of the temperament. And so I'm going to read a little bit about this from here. Now, I'm not going to show it on camera. Given the organizing principles of the temperament patterns of needs, values, and talents, we like to use the following explanation to link Jung's theory with the 4 temperaments. The 8 cognitive processes described by Jung are used to meet the needs and promote the values of the temperament pattern. Certain of these processes suit the pattern so well that the preference for these processes matches the preferences indicated by the 4-letter MBTI code as follows. And then I'll just talk about artisans. Artisans can meet their needs for impact and freedom best through the process of extroverted sensing. This process keeps them tuned into the needs of the moment, and they can readily take tactical actions and seize opportunities. How else would you recognize an opportunity? So, and then one for guardians. Guardians can meet their needs for membership and responsibility best through the process of introverted sensing. And then, so it's basically like that. Functions are in the service of temperament.
Right.
There we go. Little advert for that book. There we go. Right, so Jeff, do you want me to tell you first what I give it out of 10, or do you want to say what you give it out of 10 first?
Sure, you go first.
I give it 8 out of 10.
I'll give it a 7 because initially I was probably going to say 6, but then I feel like they had enough. The fact that they were able to sort of surprise me with some things, even if I kind of saw overall where it was going, I think bumps it up to a 7 for me. So it was entertaining and interesting concept. I feel like they could have, there's things they could have done that would definitely have made it more exciting or interesting directions they could have taken it. But, you know, for what it is, it's good. It's just not great.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the way it was produced, we had a very good set, and we had a pretty good actor playing the lead character.
Yeah,
So,
I thought he got better like after that initial scene. Like
yeah, that was weird.
The initial scene, both of them were kind of scripted sounding, but it got better as they went on.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, because there was a lot of exposition in that first scene. Because it was really like, it was almost as if they were only there so that they could have that image of the fact that they were behind the bars. And so in hindsight, it looks like they're behind bars, like the zoo thing.
Like I said before, with me thinking about that previous episode, it just reminded me so much of that. So now it's like when I see the differences and similarities to previous episodes, so immediately I'm thinking it's the same setting almost. I was just like, are they bringing back the same characters again? Are we doing
what I would
a rehash?
What I would love in the Twilight Zone, one change I would have suggested to Serling is, could you every now and then have a sequel to a previous episode?
Yeah, well, that's what I was about to say. Is I wondered if they ever did that, where they brought back characters and used them again. But again, I don't know, so I won't. And I won't look it up. So if it does ever happen, I'll be surprised by it. So.
Yeah, because it would have been it would have been very difficult at the time to do a sequel to an episode that was on a year before with no video recorders, and you have to rely on people remembering what happened. So that explains why television was so episodic then.
Well,
right, so
true, but you still had soap operas and things like that, so you definitely had that used, because not like the soaps at the time wouldn't have characters. You know, you'd have a character, say, disappear for a year and then come back, and you'd certainly have plenty of people in the audience would know who that character was when they came back.
Yeah, and also the people who were the real nerds, they would have recorded it on cassette tape, because I know they had audio recorders then.
Yeah, there were some people doing that for sure. That's how
Doctor Who,
a lot of those Doctor Who reconstructions were able to be made. Yeah,
and also, because I got Doctor Who magazine, people were actually taking photographs of the screen as they were watching the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so you gave it an 8 and I gave it a 7. Join us next week for Execution.
Yes, and it will be that. And what I'll do is I'll follow Jeff's advice and I'll look in the index and I'll go to the right page. And that way I don't have to flick through pages and see spoilers. So good on Jeff.
Yeah, I'm all innovative like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye.